What's up, guys? It's time for tennis. I'm going to be doing a little bit different of a video today. So I'm going to be standing or sitting in front of my webcam, I should say, because that's what I'm doing, putting my blue light filter glasses on. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I prefer extended length rackets. So we're going to do this. I'm going to open this tab here. I'm going to switch scenes here. Let's go to this one, and I should pop up. There I am. Hi. Hello, me. It's good to see ya. No. But it is good to see me because that means we're not having technical difficulties, right? So here I am, and we're on tenniswarehouse.com. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and show you guys something. So we're going to go over here to tenniswarehouse.com as we are, and we're going to go to Racket Finder. And we're going to do length minimum 27.1. And well, I generally put 100 because when I'm looking for an extended length racket, I don't want to get anything over 100, but let's just do this to see what there is, right? So the purpose of my video here is to actually talk about my preferences for extended length rackets, but also to show you guys how unaccommodating the market is for extended length rackets. Like when you look for something that's extended length and you don't want to get something insane, I feel like you're only down to maybe 5 rackets that you can pick from. And that kind of sucks. And they're all basically, I don't know. I'll talk about that more as I go into it. It'll make a lot more sense as I pull it up here. So what I've done here is I've set the length to be a minimum of 27.1. That way we get anything that's longer than standard, which is 27. No threshold on maximum. So I have the current models only selected. I think that's always the case by default. So this Yonex Pro 7G, I've had that. It feels like kind of a mushy racket. You can get it. It's very comfortable, but I don't think it rewards power very well. It says the power level is low medium. I don't think that's true at all. It's kind of a squishy racket, and it's one of those rackets that the more you swing, the more it flexes. It just kind of, the power kind of caps off relatively low in my opinion. And then immediately you just start getting into crazy rackets. Look at this, 110 square inches, 9 ounces. What are we doing here? 8 points head heavy. Okay, that's head heavy. That means you grab it in the center, it's going to tip forward. So just imagine how cumbersome that racket's going to be. And that's kind of how it is, right? So the first racket you pull up here, it's kind of not insane, right? It's 100 square inches, 27.5, 9 points headlight. You know, that's reasonable. 1620, cool. I like that. I think this racket looks super boring. But, well, I don't know. Kind of looks like that one superhero character. I think it's like a Japanese superhero character. But anyway, I've had this racket a few times. I'm not really a fan. I tried to like it, but yeah, not super into it. Some people really like it. It has a little bit of a cult following. You know, I think if you're like an older doubles guy, it might be a nice racket. If you're not a really heavy hitter or you prioritize comfort over actual racket performance, might be a nice option for you. So anyway, moving down the list, all these crazy rackets. Oh yeah, gosh, look at this. The Razor Bubba. That is 137 inches head size, and it's a 29-inch racket. So my whole point is here that all the rackets that are extended length, you only have a small handful of them that are actual, like, reasonable, real tennis player rackets, and then the rest are just insane, completely ridiculous. Probably no serious tennis player would actually ever use one. So the Gamma Razor 137, the swing weight is 412. All right, just for reference, I mean, we can just go back up here to this Pro Kinetic one. It's a 330 swing weight. That's not really light, but it's not super heavy. Yeah, this is 412. It's going to be so hard to swing that thing. I've actually played with one, a buddy of mine. I'm not sure if he had... No, he had the Razor Bubba. And it was a 29-inch racket, so it must have been this one with 412. I played with it. I don't think it was strung up with anything fresh necessarily, but yeah, it was just kind of a crazy racket. I was able to play all right with it, though. And gosh, just look how far you have to scroll before you find anything that doesn't have anything over 105 or 10 or 15 even. It's ridiculous. Vocal V-Feel 2, 115 square inches. Finally, here it is, the Babolat Aero Pro. The Pure Aero Plus at 100 square inches, nothing crazy. Swing weight's 330 again, like that Pro Kinetic racket was. So you guys kind of get the gist of what I'm saying here. Why is it that when you know, look for an extended length racket, it's all just a bunch of ridiculousness, crazy stuff. And it's unfortunate because I think that extended length rackets are awesome, but if somebody's looking to try one, they really don't have much option. And I think that extended length rackets are kind of stereotyped a certain way. So I'm going to talk about that too. So let's start at 27.5 and actually just let's cap it out at 100. Or actually like 105 because I don't want to cut that Serena one out. So let's see what happens now, right? So before I enter that, just look at how many options there are, and they're all crazy. They're all totally crazy, except for maybe 5 of them. This Phantom long body isn't too crazy. It's 100 square inches and 28 inches long. You know, nothing crazy. It's kind of long, but it's 100 square inches, and it's a little bit weird because it's a 16 by 18, but that one's not quite as crazy. Oh, there's that Serena one. 18 by 19. All right, so we're going to go to the top. That was just to show you how many there are, and then I'll press search. And, well, not nearly as many. Well, we got the, let's see. Yeah, so you got the Blade 104 and the Serena 102. Okay, it's a 102. All right, that's the one I wanted to keep around. This Vocal V sells 105, 16 by 19. Okay, that's not too crazy. So 27.6 inches, that's a little funky. Well, that one's not an insane racket, but I don't know, 105 square inch head size. It's probably super powerful or something. Wow, its swing weight is 304. That's really low. I'm kind of surprised they managed to get it so low. A little curious about that racket, but I'm just not a fan of 16 by 19, and I'm sure that in 105 square inches, it's going to be a little too much. So the main point here is that I don't think there's any good reason that a 27.5 racket or longer isn't designed to be like a reasonable tennis racket, you know? Why can't they make a tweener type of racket that is just happens to be a little bit longer? It's only a ½ inch at the end of the day, you know? So I'm going to reduce that back down to 102, and you can see that it really just comes down to a few. You got these 2 Yonex rackets, right? The 98 and the 100. And then you have the Pure Drive Babolat, that Prince Phantom, the Wilson Blade, Yonex E-Zone and 98 and 100 plus, and then you have the other Babolat Pure Aero Plus, and then that Pro Kinetics. That's literally the entire selection of current-ish models, right? Because this Babolat is a 2019 model, and they've had this Pro Kinetics out for, or Pro Kinetics racket out for quite some time. It's just sort of been sitting there for like 6 or 7 years. Nobody really gets it. So how many rackets is that in the entire industry of rackets that's available right now, according to Tennis Warehouse? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 9 rackets that you basically have to choose from. And of those 9 rackets, these 2 are 28 inches long, and they're kind of both crazy because one's a 16-18 and the other's an 18-19. And it has a 102 square inch head, and it's 28 inches long. So maybe that's starting to, you know, be a little bit too long for some people. Also, this blade has a pretty high stiffness, and this Prince Phantom has a pretty low stiffness. So they're both kind of just a strange racket. Like, who's going to buy this? I just wonder, who's this even marketed for? Like, who walks into a tennis shop and says, I want to get the Serena Williams 102, you know? Who does that? Like a 5.0 college player? Probably not. I don't know what kind of person would get that racket. A real tennis player would probably, I mean, I feel like the only viable rackets really are this Pure Aero Plus or this Yonex E-Zone 98. Maybe the 100. You got the Pure Drive here and maybe one of these 2 Yonexes, right? So that's really all you got. And it's so unfortunate. I mean, you compare that to the rest of the 27-inch rackets out there, and the options just pale in comparison, right? So I think I made my point to say that once you are in the extended length market, you're really limited to like a small handful of rackets. I mean, this is everything. That's it. They're all 16-19s unless you want an 18-19 or a 16 by 18, but they do also have this one 16-20, which is super cool, but it's a really mushy, weird racket, and it, I don't know, I don't know, it doesn't look so great. I'm going to go to this place called Long Bodies real quick, and I'll show you another point here. So this is longbodies.com. They specialize in extending rackets. They extend rackets up to 1/4 or a ½ inch. So they kind of specialize in this, and they you know, their whole website and market is kind of based on offering that service. So they have a tab here called Why a Long Body, and this is actually really cool stuff. So as far as I understand, I think the only two reasons that people aren't really pro extended length racket is well, I said two reasons, but I'm just going to go off a little bit here. It's like, one, there's just really nobody out there endorsing an extended length racket. I guess Serena Williams is, but it's not like she's known for hitting with an extended length racket, I don't feel like. And the market just really isn't making anything. You know, there's really no rackets out there, and most of the ones that are out there are completely ridiculous. They're crazy rackets. So I think that extended length rackets are kind of stereotyped as being ridiculous, gimmicky rackets that no serious tennis player would really play with. Because again, if you look at the selection that I showed you earlier, a lot of them are like 110, 115, even 137 square inch head size. Completely crazy. Also, if you get that Gamma Razor, like, you just have to buy the reel and probably use, I don't know, 50 or 60 feet of string as opposed to the regular 40 or so to string up a racket. Gosh. So anyway, they talk about the pros and cons here on why a long body, the tab on longbodies.com. They say the disadvantages are that it's less maneuverable. That's totally true. And the second is that it takes some time getting used to it. And that's kind of like yeah, I guess, but that's only if you're switching from standard to extended. What if you started with extended, right? Then it would take time to get used to the shorter one. So I don't really consider that a con necessarily, but it is maybe something that you should expect as an adjustment that will be necessary if you make the transition. But I think people really overrate how difficult this is. I mean, you just give yourself a week or two and you kind of just get used to it. I mean, it's, at the end of the day, it's a ½ inch. It's like that much length, you know, it's not going to change everything or mess everything up. I mean, you'll adjust. And the idea that it's less maneuverable is kind of true, because I feel like if you have two rackets that are the same weight, the longer one is definitely going to be less maneuverable. But if you play around with the weight and you know, make the racket balance in such a way that it's a little bit more handle heavy, but it's a little bit longer, that kind of negates a lot of the idea that it's less maneuverable overall. But I would also mostly agree with the idea that a longer racket is going to be a little less maneuverable. However, the pros and cons aren't necessarily just that simple. So let's talk about the advantages that they list out. So they say extra reach benefits the serve, the return of serve, overheads, double-handed strokes, and net play. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Why not? That's a lot of stuff. That should be like multiple bullet points. But yeah, extra reach benefits the serve. I actually feel like the serve is a situation where a longer racket should always be better, because your point of contact can always be higher. You have as much time as you need to generate racket speed and stuff for the power of your serve and the spin of your serve. I mean, that's the one shot in tennis where you're in complete control of when it happens and how it happens. So as far as the serve goes, I think there are zero disadvantages to having an extended length racket. I think some of this stuff is subjective. The return of serve, I can see that maybe because you're kind of, you know, reaching out there desperately to get the ball. Having a little bit of length on there can help. Also, you're really rushed to generate racket head speed on a serve sometimes. This can happen on any shot, obviously, but the thing is that you don't have to put this is a little bit tricky to explain, but basically if you're swinging your arm equally with the longer racket, the head speed of the racket should be a little bit faster. So yes, it is a little harder to get the racket up to speed, but you don't have to quite get it up to as much speed to have the same kind of power or plow through, etc. So it's not quite that simple, but that's kind of a simplification of a point I'm trying to make. But you guys understand what I'm saying, right? The longer racket, the head speed is going to be traveling faster. Therefore, if your arm isn't moving quite as fast, it's not as big of a deal because the racket's also longer. So yeah, that sort of evens out in a way. One of my main reasons for getting a extended length racket is because I guess I have kind of big hands. Like, I sort of have big hands, and I'm also 6'3", so like proportionally my hands are kind of on the larger side. So me trying to get two hands on a racket handle, a lot of the times, especially on Wilson's or basically any brand that isn't Yonex, for some reason the Yonex handle mold is just a little bit longer, and I really appreciate that. But basically on any other racket, I end up grabbing like the throat of the racket, and there's just no way for me to really avoid that. Me with my hand at the very bottom of the handle, like, you know, even off of the butt cap a little bit, in my hand right on top. You know, I'm not one of those guys that grips the racket like this. Like this, it's still, sure enough, grabbing the throat of the racket. It just digs into the bone, and I feel like I'm hitting with this really stubby racket. That's one of the reasons I switched to one-handed backhand, but also just, you know, it's a one-handed backhand. Need I say enough? It's just fun. It looks great and it feels great when you hit one nicely. So I just had to try it. You know, I'm not out here trying to win tournaments and be the best tennis player in the world or anything like that. I can afford to mess around with my tennis, and, you know, no big deal. But that being said, I feel like you know, I play decent tennis with a one or two-handed backhand. So what else is there? They say, and net play. Yeah, I can see that. But again, that kind of falls into the category of pros and cons. Like, it's more, you have more reach, and so in situations where you want more reach, it's going to be great. But in situations where you might have to get out of your own way, like the racket's coming right at your chest or something, or like this kind of weird area, when the ball comes at me here, I'm right-handed. This area is tricky. If it's right at my chest, it's easy. I kind of just, like, you know, take the racket here and I can deflect it with a backhand volley. But if it's right around here, it's like I gotta either move this way or duck or something like that, and the extra length means that I might have to move out of the way a little bit more than I would if I had a shorter racket. So again, I think it's kind of a pros and cons thing. It's just, you know, it's a situation of, you know, if you have a shorter racket, you have to be quicker to get the farther reaching balls, and if you have a longer one, you're gonna have to be quicker to get out of your own way. So I think the pros and cons kind of work out there. Yeah, you know, depending on how you want to play your tennis. But a lot of doubles players use extended length rackets, and a lot of tennis happens at the net in doubles. So maybe that says something there. Let's see. Increase natural and controlled power potential because of a higher swing weight instead of easy power by a higher stiffness. Okay, there has to be a less wordsy way to say that. That was a little bit of a word salad there. All right. I will say that I think it's really interesting that you have a racket, and simply by extending the length, you increase the swing weight without increasing the static weight. So you can have two rackets that weigh the same, but the racket, if everything else is equal, the one that is longer is going to have a higher swing weight, which means that, you know, once you get your racket head up to speed, the longer one is going to have more penetration power, right? Because there's more leverage accelerating the head of the racket. So you just have more mass moving at a longer distance. So it's just going to have more plow through. And if you're talking about like racket head speed for generating topspin, that head speed will also be moving from a low to high motion, again, faster because it's further away from the point that it's pivoting. So, you know, I mean, the concept is very simple. Like if I'm waving my hand here, this part of my hand is not moving as fast as this part of my hand, right? So if you're looking at my hand here, my middle finger is moving faster than my thumb, even though they're all on the same hand. You know what I mean? They're all getting to the end of my wrist motion at the same time, but the middle finger is traveling at a faster speed. And so that principle applies to the extended length. And basically all the pros and cons kind of boil down to that fact. Better plow through, it forces you to hit, or forces or helps you to hit through the ball. Okay. I feel like they're kind of combining a lot of bullet points into one. Better plow through, just that's one point it should be. Yeah, again, because of that racket head speed, once you generate it, it's really going to go through the ball. It forces or helps you to hit through the ball. What do they mean by it forces you to hit through the ball? I don't know about that, but I would say that any racket with a higher swing weight, you're generally going to have to clean up your strokes a little bit. If you're a developing tennis player, you're like in the 3-5 or 4-0, 4-5 range, I think that's the kind of range of tennis where some of your slop, so to say, is kind of in the take back of your strokes. So once you start getting a heavier racket and you start hitting with better players that are hitting harder balls, you start to realize, oh, I'm wasting a lot of time taking my racket back this far. Maybe I can just take it here and still generate the same power. So you start to have to make changes to your game like that, but you also have to cooperate with the racket weight a little more. I remember when I started getting heavier rackets, I might have held my racket like down here when I was getting in the ready position, or my take back would just kind of be like straight back, and then I pull my racket up or something. But now I take my racket high, and I let gravity do some of the work. And then once that generates some speed, I bring it all through and push it forward. And that's the way you want to hit a forehand. Same principle on the backhand, but obviously the mechanics are different because, it's just a different stroke. But the concept is the same. You want to get the weight to work with you as opposed to against you, because if you're fighting the weight and you got a heavier racket, that's more weight to fight. Let's see, more stability against heavy spin-loaded balls. Again, that just kind of plays into the stability and the swing weight thing. A higher swing weight without an increase in static weight. Yep, that's one of my favorite things about it. So you can get a lot of the benefits of a higher swing weight racket without actually having to increase the weight, which is pretty cool. A higher recoil weight, therefore more arm friendly. That might be true. The other thing too about extended length rackets is that there's more distance between the sweet spot of the racket and your hand, so the vibrations that are traveling from the racket or any kind of harshness, even if you're, did I just say harshness like Sean Connery? Harshness has more time to travel from the contact point down to the racket handle, so it has a little bit more distance it has to travel through the racket. It's probably going to get dampened a little bit more. I think that's a reasonable argument. I was working with a manufacturer actually that talked about making a different material instead of the PU grip mold that was going to be more responsive, and he said that it's really important for extended length rackets because they're longer, for you to have a more, I don't know, intimate connection with the vibration and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's very thoughtful that you would say that. Anyway, let's see what the next 2 points are. Extra power with a higher tip speed. Yep, I kind of already talked about that. And extra spin with a higher tip speed. Yeah, I kind of talked about that in the same point. Yeah, these bullet points are funny because I feel like some of them are like 3 bullet points in one, and some of them are like 2 bullet points that could have been 1 bullet point. And I feel like these two are actually like that. So again, if you can get the racket head up to speed, there should be a lot of advantages working in your favor. And one thing that is a fixed advantage of having the extended length racket is that you literally have more reach. Every time you reach out for a volley, you got like a half extra inch or a full inch of length that you didn't have before. It doesn't matter how fast you can run. Like, say all your stats are maxed out. You are the fastest, strongest tennis player you're ever going to be. You're not getting any taller, etc. Now you have an extra half inch on top of that because you have a longer racket. Like that is now an advantage to your game that you didn't have before. I think that a lot of people are way too quick to focus on the disadvantages, which aren't necessarily disadvantages, right? People get heavier rackets. Heavier rackets are also less maneuverable. Need some time to get used to it. Well, that's only true, again, if you are switching from 27 to 27.5 or whatever length you go with. And also, I think people really overestimate how significant the change is to go from 27 to 27.5. I think if you give yourself a few days, you will start to make the transition. It's funny because when you're enthusiastic about making a change, you're kind of, you're excited about it. It's like, oh, you want to clean up your forehand or something like that. It's going to take time. Your tennis might suffer a little bit, but in the long run, it's going to be better for you. But for some reason, people try and extend length racket. They're like, I can't adjust, it feels weird. It's too long. And it's like, you could just give yourself a little time to adjust to it. And then suddenly you might never want to go back. So it's just a mindset thing. It's a stigma thing. And I think a lot of the stigma comes from the fact that a lot of top players don't endorse an extended length racket. And I'm going to get to this in a second because that's actually not quite true. That's not quite true. A lot of pros use extended length rackets, and I'll show you a list of them. Lists of people that you certainly know for sure. And just, again, the fact that the retail market really doesn't accommodate extended length rackets except for just stupid options where it's like 115, 130 inch size rackets. No real tennis player is going to play with that, etc. So let's go to a list here. So I'm going to try to talk in my jazz voice because I don't need to be burning up my voice too quick. I don't even have water here that I can take a sip from, and I'm too lazy to get up and have any. So we're going to resort to my jazz voice. All right. So I don't know everyone's name here, but this is a list of some of the current and past pros that use or used a long body. Benoit Paire. That dude is sick. He uses an extended length racket, or he did. Andy Roddick did. He had one of the best serves of all time. We all know that. Bob Bryan, I assume that's one of the Bryan brothers. It's a doubles guy. I know Bernard Tomic. I'm probably going to say some names wrong, but, whatever. I don't know him too well. I just know him as a name. Let's see. David Ferrer. It was always funny seeing Ferrer versus Federer on the TV. It's just like, wait, who? Who's up? Who's down? He's retired, but I think he was using a 28-inch racket. And then you have now Bandy, and that guy's kind of a legend, right? I think he was also using a 28-inch racket. Diego Schwartzman also using a 28-inch racket. That dude is short. I think he's the shortest guy in the top 100 on the tour, maybe on the tour in general, not sure. But he uses an extended length racket. And now he's an example that comes up in the conversation a lot because like, oh, nobody uses extended length rackets. And then you might say, oh, but Diego Schwartzman uses one. And then they're like, yeah, but he's really short, you know? So it's like this kind of And well, here's what I have to say to that. First of all, there's a lot of professional tennis players on this list that are not short, so to speak, that are using an extended length racket. So it's kind of funny that the first person people think of is Diego Schwartzman. But again, they're probably aware of him using an extended length racket because he's shorter. And so maybe he's using an extended length racket to make up for his lacking wingspan on average compared to the other top 100 players or something like that. But my response to that is that's totally valid. I respect that decision, but consider this. The taller you are, and this is something that people tell me because I'm tall, I don't need an extended length racket. So they try to talk me out of that, which is really annoying. I'm thinking I'm taller. Maybe for my length and my height, a longer racket would be more proportional to my body, right? Because a lot of guys, they average in America maybe about 5'10", 5'11". I'm a good 3 to 4 inches taller than that. So why can't my racket just be an extra half inch? And that's kind of, you know, I mean, taller people wear taller shirts, larger feet wear larger shoes. Why can't taller people also just get a proportionally longer racket or something like that? So I think that is also a valid way of looking at it. I also understand the concept of your arms are longer, you don't need an extended length racket. Okay, sure, that's fair, but also like, why not also just have long arms and then on top of that have a long racket? That sounds super awesome. I'll have so much reach because I'm already tall, and then on top of that I have an extended length racket. You better watch out, you know? I like that. So I'm just really tired of people having like a negative stigma mindset, and they use examples like Diego Schwartzman both for and against switching to an extended length racket when you have so many other examples of people here. And then people also say stuff where the racket doesn't matter or something like that. And then that's like, great, the racket doesn't matter. Then who cares what length you're using? Try an extended length racket. You can enjoy the benefits of a longer racket. You'll be fine. It's the player, not the racket, right? So why are you even having this argument? What other names are on here? Oh, Bouchard used, that's cool. Eugenie, that's Jeannie Bouchard, right? Is that a different player? Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not super versed on all of my tennis players here. That's cool. Gail Monfils used one. I didn't know that. Monfils. Again, I said I'm probably going to just butcher names, even though I should know some of these guys. There's so many in there. All not from America for the most part. Jamie Murray? Wait, is that Andy Murray's mom? I have no idea. I don't know if she's a pro tennis player or not. I don't know who that is. I just see the name and I think Andy Murray, but it's not. Isner. Okay, so here's another example, right? Now, if you say that, have that conversation, right? Like, oh, Schwartzman uses one. Oh, yeah, but it's because he's short. And then you're like, yeah, but also John Isner uses one. Yeah, but it's because he's super tall, right? I've literally had that conversation with like 3 people, and I'm just like, oh my God, I hate the way that you guys have conversations. It's so exhausting. Those people are still my friends. Anyway, Del Potro. That's another big name. Justine Henin. I only know her because of that video above. Kei Nishikori or Kai. I'm not actually sure. We'll just say Nishikori. So I think his story is that he used a 27.25 and a 27.5. He kind of switched back and forth a lot, and maybe even situationally. It would be cool if somebody had like an interview where he talked about that. I'm not sure that actually exists or not, but you know, if I ever had a chance to interview him, I would talk to him about that. Leighton Hewitt, that dude was a legend. I don't know how long his racket was. Who else? Is Mike Bryan the other Bryan Bros guy? That makes sense. Those two are so interesting. Aren't they like total mirrors of each other? One's left, one's right. It's so weird. They're twins, identical twins. Djokovic, that's right. So I forget when this happened, but Djokovic, I think the only guy that's one of the big 3 that uses or did ever use an extended length racket, he hits, I believe, with a 27.1 inch racket. So the racket was extended a little bit, gives him a little more power, a little more reach. That was one of the adjustments that he went through in his last major racket transition. So that's a fun fact. People talk about nobody endorsing a extended length racket, and that's kind of true because Novak isn't extending or endorsing a racket that is 27.1, but he is certainly playing with one. All these pros, you know, they don't really endorse the racket that they play with. Allegedly Federer does, but even then his racket, you know, it's probably made with zero quality control issues, and he plays with power pads. Who knows what else is different about his racket, but literally like Shapovalov or something, the racket he actually hits with is not the racket that he's endorsing right now. Same with Wawrinka, same with Nadal, same with literally just everybody pretty much. That's just how it is. You think a pro player is going to switch their racket every time, you know, the retailer decides to? You know how much it would mess up their game? A lot of rackets or pros just, they turn pro with whatever racket they have and they try to stick with that as long as possible. Some of them change their rackets or minds a lot. I think Dimitrov is an example of that. Federer has evolved his tennis a lot, and his racket has kind of evolved over the ages as well. He's an interesting example, but I think Nadal is maybe an example of somebody that really never changed his racket. I think he might have changed the settings a little bit, like a little more lead here and there. Not totally sure. Those kinds of things are hard to confirm, but there's forums about it. Gasquet. I didn't know Gasquet used an extended length racket, so he's famous for having one of the nicest one-handed backhands of all time. Really beautiful one-handed backhand, and he has a super weird way of wrapping his racket. He's got that crazy butt cap flare. Almost want to pull that up for you. Serena Williams. Oh, okay, cool. I wonder how long the racket she actually uses is. I wonder if it's you know, anything like the endorsed racket or not. And Venus Williams does too. That's interesting. Kakanakis. Huh. Yeah, I mean, that's quite a lot of people. So I wanted to show you this list because a lot of people bring up examples. They say nobody uses them, or only the extremes use them, like Schwartzman or Isner. But there are clearly a very diverse set of players here, from play styles to height, the era that they played in. There's so many examples of extended length rackets on the tour here. So the intention of my video here is to just hopefully, you know, open your mind up a little bit to extended length rackets, because I think they offer a lot of interesting advantages. I think people really only think about weight and balance and other things like that, string pattern, etc., when length is really something that I think is really exciting to consider. Now, unfortunately, the market doesn't necessarily accommodate that super well. I showed you the extremely limited selection of available rackets that aren't completely crazy. And you can look back on my videos on some of those because I've reviewed them. But I want to tell you a couple things. There are a couple of racket services in America and in Europe, which should cover just about everybody, that offer a service where they will extend your racket. So there's longbodies.com. You can buy it extended from them. I think there's UTR. No, what are they called? They actually might be called UTR. I'm sorry, I don't remember, because I know that's also the kind of USTA competitor or whatever. There's also CTR, Custom Tennis Rackets. Those guys I think are based in Florida. I've talked to them. They're good people. One dude does custom paint jobs, super pro at what he does, and another guy works on the handles and extends the handles to basically whatever length you want, but I think he won't warranty his work past 1 inch of extension, and that sounds pretty reasonable to me. So on top of that, there's also a product by a company called XTP. They make a plastic sleeve, which is essentially a butt cap with the sleeve on it. It's like a long butt cap. I'd grab one, but I actually just installed my last one on the VCORE 95 that I just got. So I just recently got a VCORE 95, which is a standard length racket, and I put the XTP butt cap on there, and it took me about maybe 10 minutes, and now I have a 27.5 VCORE 95. I might even have the only one out there, who knows? But it's really cool to think that there is a butt cap that you can buy, and it's like 15 bucks or something like that. And it's definitely the easiest way to turn a standard length racket into an extended length racket. So I just want to let you know that there is definitely a way or two of extending a standard length racket, so you can kind of look on the market, find what you want, and then if you want to extend it, you can. And that company CTR only charges, I think, about $40 to do that. You probably have to pay to ship your racket to them and back or something like that, but a lot of tennis players are located in Florida too, so that's something to consider. And shipping it within the States, I think, should be about $14 to $15. It's not a big deal. I always use the post office. They're generally cheapest. Or you can buy the XTP butt cap, and that will extend your racket 1/2 inch, and you just have to remove your butt cap and put this one on. It's not that hard. You just got to maybe use a heat gun to kind of loosen up the butt cap, and you can slide it over your grip, and it should fit just fine. You might not even have to staple or glue it, because the heat gun will expand it, and then you'll put it on, and it'll squeeze it so tight once the grip returns back to its normal temperature, or the sleeve does, and then you'll wrap it with your base grip and the over grip or something. But if you just want to be extra secure about it, not a bad idea to staple it down or glue it. So those are a few different ways that you can get a standard racket and make it an extended length racket. But it might just happen that you're happy with the standard options that are available on retail for $27.5 and up. So I hope this video kind of covered everything. I know I talked about a lot and it wasn't necessarily in the most organized fashion, but I can do a video like this again in the future. But I just did a video about why I'm selling my VCORE 97, and the two main reasons were, one, it's a 16 by 19 racket, and two, if I'm going to extend my racket, I should just pick a racket that I really like the string pattern of first. So I really like that racket, but I think everything I didn't like about it had to do with the string pattern. So I'm selling it, but it was great. I had a lot of nice things to say about it, but I kept talking about my extended length racket preference, and that ultimately being a reason I'm selling it, even though I put the XTP Buttcap on there. But somebody did actually buy it off of eBay. They wanted the extended length Buttcap on there, so it goes to say something about the demand for it a little bit, I guess. So that guy might have the only extended length VCORE Pro 97 310 out there right now. That's pretty cool. So if you happen to be seeing this video, say hi. That's kind of crazy that you found this or whatever, but makes sense. It's a small world out there in the extended length racket world. Anyway, let me know in the comments, do you guys hit with extended length? Are you curious about them? What is your thoughts on them? And I am also curious to know if this video had anything, you know, if it did anything to change your opinion on them. I hope so, because I think that more people should play around with the length. Like, why should 27 length be the standard for every single person on there? Because clearly in the real world on the tour, it is not. And I don't think that, you know, rackets are really a one-size-fits-all thing. There's a lot of racket diversity when it comes to head size and string pattern and stiffness and beam thickness and weight and balance and stuff, but extremely limited when it comes to length. And I think that's just ridiculous. That's just so silly. The thing is too, that racket manufacturers could save themselves a lot of trouble by just making a racket, right? You make one racket and then just make another version of that racket that is the exact same as that, but it's a ½ inch longer. Wow. Then you wouldn't have to have a whole completely different racket or something like that. You can just have the same mold, make it the same way and everything, but just leave a little extra on the handle. And then, you know, you can call it the plus version of that racket. I think that's awesome. Just like put, I don't know, put a few hundred of those out there and see what happens. I think they're just afraid that they'll do that and nobody's going to buy them. But I honestly think that it would start to generate some curiosity if they did. So I think that they should do it. But I'm out here trying to create a little bit more intrigue and demand for the plus length rackets, because I think there's a lot going for them and they're totally slept on and really misunderstood, underappreciated, and underrealized. And I think it's a damn shame. So go out there and try a plus racket sometime. Even if you don't think you'll like it, just do it to get used to the length, do it to get used to the spacing, because that stuff is a little bit different, but you might love it. It's really nice when you toss the ball up there on a serve and you can actually catch it a little bit higher. You might notice that your ball is faster, or that it kind of points down at a steeper angle, or that you're able to even generate more speed or spin or power or something like that. Yeah, just give it a try. I don't think it's as much of a learning curve as people like to say that it is, because people that are saying that probably haven't really tried and committed to the change. But I have, and I'm never going back. So yeah, that's where I'm at. All right, well, thanks for watching that. I really appreciate that you sat through all that content. I know it was a lot that I went over. That's what I have to say about the extended length rackets. If you appreciated that and you appreciate my content and you want to see more, you have questions or comments or something, you can certainly leave them in the comments section. I will do my best to answer them. And please consider subscribing if you appreciate the content, because I'm trying to grow this channel. The more I grow this channel, the more power it gives me to, you know, work with other brands, offer them more value, and it gets me kind of fired up to watch the channel grow, to be honest, too. So it's a win-win thing. You know, you help this channel grow, helps me provide more value to the consumers and to the brands that I work with, if I ever do. So yeah, I will see you guys there. All right. Till then, see you in a future video. Bye.